despite his brutal nature, he's become their protector in this nightmare. And she can't shake the feeling that they're betraying him. But survival trumps loyalty in the face of the fire, and the girls know they must act swiftly. They work together, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as they tug and pull the ropes around his massive limbs. Each knot is tighter than the last, a silent declaration of their intent to escape. The fur that once adorned their bodies is now a tool of their captivity, a stark symbol of the reversal of power dynamics within the cave. When the flames are under control and Primal is secured, Leela calls the group to gather around her. Her voice, though shaky, holds an undeniable authority. She recounts her encounter with Primal before, his dominance, and the unspoken bond that has grown between them. She speaks of his fierce protectiveness and the fear that consumes him when he thinks she's in danger. The girls listen in rapt silence, their eyes reflecting a mix of skepticism and fear. They know the creature that lies bound before them is not one to be trifled with. Yet, there's something in Leela's voice, a conviction that resonates within them. They've seen his brutality, but now they're hearing about his gentleness, his care, and his fear. It's a side of Primal none of them had anticipated. "Look," Leela says, her voice firm but not unkind. "I know he's not an animal, but he's not just a beast either. We can't just leave him here like this. And if we talk about running again, he'll know, he'll wake up, and we'll have bigger problems than we ever had before." Gremlin, nursing her injured ear, glares at her but doesn't argue. Bunny nods slowly, her eyes never leaving Primal's still form. "We need a plan," she murmurs. "We can't stay here forever. And we can't just keep fighting him." At the waterfall, Tiffany's sobs mingle with the rush of the water, her bruised body shivering under the icy cascade. She scrubs at the grime, desperate to wash away the memories of her captivity. The water is a cold embrace, a stark reminder of their situation. Her thoughts are a tumultuous storm, a battle between anger and fear, loyalty and self-preservation. Back in the cavern, Leela, Gremlin, and Bunny huddle together, their breaths coming in shallow pants as they try to calm their racing hearts. The fire has been contained, the flaming embers casting a flickering glow on their worried faces. They share a look, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Gremlin, her ear still throbbing from Leela's bite, glowers at the unconscious Primal, her eyes glinting with resentment. "We can't trust him," she hisses, her voice low so as not to wake Madame Luna or the sleeping girl. Leela, her fur matted with sweat and dirt from the struggle, looks at her friend with a mix of pity and resolve. "We don't have a choice," she whispers back. "We need to find a way to work together. We can't keep fighting each other and expect to survive." Gremlin's expression softens, the anger in her eyes slowly giving way to a weary acceptance. She nods, her bruised body a testament to the battles they've all endured. "But what about Madame Luna?" she asks, her voice barely audible above the crackling fire. Leela's gaze drifts to the sleeping form of their captor, a sigh escaping her lips. "We can't leave her here," she murmurs, her voice thick with emotion. "We're in this together, whether we like it or not." One by one, their eyes grow heavy with exhaustion, the warmth of the contained fire and the weight of their fears lulling them into a fitful sleep. The cavern is a tableau of survival and struggle, each member of the group lying where they fell, their bodies a tapestry of bruises and bandages. Hours later, the fire has dwindled to a soft glow, casting the cavern in a deep, shadowy embrace. The only sound is the occasional crackle of a dying ember and the distant drip of water from the cave's ceiling. It's in this stillness that Bunny's eyes flutter open, the quiet alertness of a creature that has learned to survive in the dark. Her eyes scan the area, searching for any signs of danger, any indication that their brief respite from fear has been shattered. But as her gaze falls upon the spot where Primal lay bound, her heart skips a beat. The ropes are still there, charred and frayed, but the creature they had once contained is gone. The panic rises like bile in her throat, the reality of their situation crashing down upon her. The cavern seems to close in around her, the darkness pressing against her eyes like a thick, suffocating shroud. She tries to swallow the fear, to push it down into the depths of her stomach where it can't strangle her. The fire has died down to a smolder, the embers casting eerie shadows across the cavern walls. Before she can scream, a massive paw covers her mouth, the fur rough against her skin. The smell of burnt fur fills her nostrils as she's yanked into the Inkai blackness. Her eyes widen, searching for any hint of movement, but there's nothing, only the sound of her own frantic breaths. Then she feels the heat of his breath against her cheek, the rumble of his growl resonating through her body like a bass note from hell's own symphony. Primal's eyes glow with an intensity that pierces the darkness, his gaze locked onto hers. His voice, a harsh whisper, sends a shiver down her spine. You think you can challenge me? His words are a mix of anger and something else, a hint of betrayal that cuts deeper than any knife. Her body is yanked back, her ankle caught in his unyielding grip. The panic in her eyes mirrors the chaos in her mind. She tries to kick, to scream, but his paw muffles her cries. The other girls, lost in their own nightmares, are oblivious to the horror unfolding before them. You dare, he snarls, his eyes burning with a rage that seems to fill the cavern. His grip tightens, and she feels the floor give way as she's dragged into the shadows. The smell of burnt fur and ash fills her nostrils, a stark reminder of their earlier struggle. Her heart races, each beat a painful thud against her ribcage. Her body collides with the cold, hard ground, the impact jarring her teeth. Primal looms above her, his massive form blocking out what little light there is. You think I won't take what's mine? He growls, his voice low and menacing. His paws pin her shoulders down, the weight of his body pressing her into the dirt. The girls' eyes fly open, their screams cut short by their own fear as Primal's furious gaze sweeps over them. They shrink back, cowering from the monster that has emerged from the shadows. You dare challenge me? His voice echoes through the cavern, each word a declaration of his dominance. Bunny's eyes widen in horror as she's dragged into the darkness, her muffled protests lost in the thick fur covers his hand. The smell of burnt fur and ash fills the air, a grim reminder of the fire they'd hoped would bring them warmth and safety. Primal's eyes gleam with a hunger that's no longer just physical. It's a craving for power, for control over these creatures that have dared to stand against him. The other girls, jolted from their fitful slumber by the shrill echo of their friend's screams, watch in terror as she's flung around the cavern like a rag doll. The panic in their eyes mirrors the chaos that had been set in motion by their desperate bid for freedom. They've awakened the beast that had been slumbering within Primal, and now he's ready to reclaim what he believes is rightfully his. Bunny's screams pierce the quietude, bouncing off the cavern walls and reverberating in their ears like a macabre symphony. Her body contorts in his powerful grip, her hair matted with dirt and sweat as she's dragged across the rocky floor. The fire's embers cast a flickering, hellish glow on Primal's snarling muzzle, highlighting the fury etched in his features. The other girls scramble to their feet, the shock of his sudden aggression freezing them in place for a split second before their instincts kick in. Fear and adrenaline flood their veins as they realize the gravity of their mistake. They've pushed him too far, and now they face the wrath of a creature they've only just begun to understand. Gremlin and the brunette, their own fears now forgotten, rush to Bunny's aid, their eyes blazing with the fierce determination that comes from a place of shared terror. But Primal is too fast, too powerful. With a snarl, he flings them aside, their bodies skidding across the cavern floor like discarded toys. Bunny's eyes are wide with horror as she's pinned beneath Primal's weight. His fur is singed, the smell of burning fur mixing with the metallic tang of blood. His eyes, once filled with a gentle understanding, now gleam with a primal hunger that makes her blood run cold. "Please," she whimpers, the word barely escaping her throat, her voice a mere whisper of the strength she had moments ago. Primal's snarl is the only answer she receives. His paws, now free from their makeshift bonds, roam over her body, his claws digging into her soft flesh as he asserts his dominance. She feels the heat of his arousal pressing against her, and the panic wells up inside her, threatening to consume her entirely. Her hands flail, searching for anything to fight him off with, her nails scratching at his fur and skin. The other girls watch in horror, their hearts hammering in their chests as they realize the full extent of Primal's wrath. They've seen his dominance, his control, but this is something else entirely. It's a brutal reminder of their own vulnerability, of the fine line between protector and predator. Bunny's eyes are wide with terror, her body trembling beneath Primal's unforgiving grip. She's no match for his strength, but she fights with every ounce of will she possesses. Her nails dig into his sides, drawing blood, her teeth snapping at his snarling muzzle. Her legs kick wildly, trying to push him away, but he's relentless, his weight pinning her to the cold, hard ground. With a low growl, Primal tears away the remnants of her garment, exposing her nakedness to the flickering firelight. His eyes fixate on the apex of her thighs, his nose flaring as he takes in her scent, a potent mix of fear and arousal that sends a shiver down his spine. He licks his chops, his tongue tracing the path of the flaming branch's fiery kiss across his face, the pain momentarily forgotten in the face of his primal instincts. Bunny's heart hammers in her chest as he leans in closer, his hot breath washing over her skin, carrying with it the scent of burnt fur and anger. His eyes are a piercing blue, a stark contrast to the shadowy cavern, as he sniffs her intimately, his nose nuzzling against her pussy. A whine of fear escapes her as she feels his tongue, rough and wet, flick against her lips. Her body responds against her will, her legs quivering, and her pussy growing slick with a desire she's too scared to acknowledge. The other girls watch, a mix of horror and fascination playing across their faces. They've never seen Primal like this, the raw power of his sexual dominance laid bare before them. They know they're next if they don't find a way to stop him, to tame the beast that has taken over the creature they thought they knew. With a snarl, Primal clamps his paws down on either side of Bunny's hips, holding her in place as he lowers his head. His tongue, hot and rough, licks a path up her trembling thighs, sending shivers through her body despite the fear that holds her in its icy grip. He's so close to her core that she can feel his breath against her lips. Vibrations of his snarl resonate within her, and she feels herself slipping as the pleasure builds. Desperation sets on. She sees a rock, a jagged piece of the cavern's wall that had been dislodged during their earlier struggle. Her hand closes around it, and with a strength born of pure fear, she slams it into Primal's head. The impact is surprising, and for a moment, he's dazed, his eyes glazed with pain. The room echoes with the sound of the rock connecting with flesh and bone, and the other girl's eyes widen with hope. But it's a fleeting respite. The beast snarls, his eyes clearing, and his grip on her tightens. The pain in his expression shifts to anger, a fierce, unbridled rage that sends a tremor of dread down her spine. He's been challenged, and now he's going to show her who's in charge. With a roar that shakes the cavern walls, Primal rips the rock from her hand and flings it aside. It clatters against the stone, disappearing into the shadows. He hoists her up, her legs dangling, and she feels his cock, hot and thick, press against her pussy. He's so much larger than she'd ever imagined, his size a stark reminder of his power. The other girls watch, paralyzed by a mix of fear and a strange, unwelcome arousal. They see the determination in Primal's eyes, the raw need that has taken over his features. He's not going to be denied what he believes is his, and that need is a palpable force that seems to fill the very air around them. Bunny's eyes widen as he forces himself into her, her body stretching around his thickness, a searing agony that steals her breath. But it's not just the physical pain that scares her, it's the emotional torment, the realization that she's no match for the creature that stands above her. Gremlin and Leela watch, their hearts pounding in their chests. They've seen Primal's gentleness, his care for them, and they know this isn't the creature they've come to trust. Yet here he is, their protector turned predator, driven by a need that seems to have no bounds. They're torn between their fear and the strange, unwanted desire that coils in their bellies, watching as he takes what he wants from their friend. Leela, her own past with Primal haunting her, steps forward, her eyes never leaving Primal's face. "Please," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Not like this." Primal's snarl turns into a low, guttural growl, his eyes never leaving Bunny's as he takes in her pain. His grip relaxes, just a fraction, and for a moment, Leela dares to hope she's reached him. But the beast inside won't be denied, and with a fierce grunt, he adjusts his hold and drags her further into the cavern. The sound of her whimpers and the crunch of gravel beneath his paws are the only noises that pierce the tense silence. The other girls scurry after them, their fear for their friend overshadowing their own terror. They know they can't let this happen. Not like this. Not when they've all suffered so much already. Their hearts hammer in their chests as they follow the monster and their friend into the Inkai blackness. "Bunny." Leela's voice is a desperate cry, her eyes searching the shadows for any sign of her. The only response is a muffled whimper, the sound of flesh against stone, and the unmistakable wet slap of Primal claiming what he believes is his. The sound is a visceral assault on their ears, each impact sending a fresh wave of horror crashing through them. Gremlin's eyes are wet with unshed tears, her bruised body trembling with the effort of keeping up. "We have to stop him," she whispers, her voice barely audible above the dull roar of the waterfall outside. "We can't let him do this to her." But Leela's voice is firm, a steel thread weaving through the fabric of their fear. "Mine," she says, her eyes never leaving the shadows where Primal's growls resonate with a feral intensity. "We can't just rush in and expect to save her." Gremlin nods, her eyes hardening with a newfound resolve. "We're not leaving her," she says, her jaw set with determination. "We'll find a way to get her out of there." But as they approach the sound of Bunny's whimpers, they find themselves frozen in place. Primal's form is silhouetted by the moonlight streaming through a crack in the cavern's wall, his powerful body moving in a rhythm that's both mesmerizing and terrifying. Bunny's eyes are squeezed shut, her face a contorted mask of pain and fear. "Please," she sobs, her voice breaking on the word. "I've never had a man inside me. Please, Primal, not like this." Her pleas are a desperate attempt to reach the part of him that had once shown her kindness, that had looked at her with something akin to tenderness. Primal's movements pause, his eyes narrowing in the dim light. He looks down at her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, she thinks she sees a flicker of recognition, a hint of the creature that had been her protector before the fire. "You dare to lie to me." His voice is a low rumble, the threat in his words unmistakable. He throws her against the wall with a force that leaves her gasping for air, her body colliding with the cold stone with a sickening thud. Her vision swims as stars dance before her eyes, the pain in her head competing with the ache in her pussy. He towers over her, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the cavern floor. His muzzle is inches from her face, his hot breath fanning across her skin as he sniffs at her, his nostrils flaring. "You think you can hide your scent from me," he snarls, his teeth bared. With a swift movement that belies his size, he grabs her by the hips and yanks her towards him, forcing her closer. His tongue darts out, licking a path from her clit to her belly button, leaving a wet trail in its wake. "I've been inside you," he growls, his voice a low rumble that seems to echo through the very bones of the earth. "I've claimed you, marked you mine." The word hung in the air, thick with the scent of burnt fur and the musk of desire. Leela and Gremlin watch, their hearts racing with a mix of terror and a strange, unwelcome arousal. They can see the conflict in Primal's eyes, the struggle between the creature of rage and the protector they know. Her hands scrabble at the stone, trying to escape. Her eyes fly open, and she looks up at the crack in the ceiling, the sliver of moonlight her only escape from the darkness. She feels a strange sense of peace, a resignation to the moment. If this is what it takes to survive, to keep the others safe, she'll endure it. She arches her back, pushing herself into his face, feeling his hot tongue delve into her depths. The pain subsides, replaced by a building tension that coils in her belly like a living thing. Her hands slide down the wall, palms flat against the cold, damp stone. With a deep breath, she relaxes her body, letting Primal's roughness become something else, a strange, twisted comfort in the face of his overwhelming power. His teeth graze her inner thighs, his tongue lapping at her pussy with a gentle insistence that seems to soothe the raw ache. Her eyes drift shut, and she feels her body respond in spite of herself. Every time she's fought him, every time she's tried to run, he's been a storm of anger and violence. But now, as she surrenders to his will, she's at peace, rough but in a way that somehow feels right. His teeth graze her thighs, his tongue a gentle caress against her kitten. With a sigh, she arches her back, her hands pressing into the cold, damp stone of the cavern wall. The pain morphs into something else, a tension that builds with each of Primal's measured licks. She feels his fingers slide into her, filling her as his tongue continues to explore her depths with a surprising tenderness. It's as if she's offering herself up as a sacrifice to the beast, and in return, he's offering nothing. Her breaths come in short, ragged gasps, her hips instinctively pushing back to meet his probing digits. The sounds of his feasting are the only sounds in the cavern now, the echoes of their struggle replaced by the intimate dance of predator and prey. With every stroke of his tongue, every plunge of his fingers, Primal seems to grow more gentle, his movements less erratic and more deliberate. His teeth graze her skin, not in a bite, but in a nip that feels almost affectionate. With every push, she felt his claws dig into her skin, leaving a trail of fire along her insides. The pain was sharp, but it mingled with the pleasure that grew with every beat of her racing heart. Her eyes squeezed shut. She could feel her body opening up to him, stretching around his hands, her inner muscles clenching and releasing in a silent plea for more. Despite her fear, she was lost in the sensation, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and desire. His roughness was a balm to the bruises and scrapes she'd accumulated during their escape, a reminder that she was alive, that she was here in this moment with him. His teeth grazed her neck, nipping and biting, but never hard enough to draw blood. It was a dance of pain and pleasure, a dance she never wanted to end. Bunny's body tightened around him, her muscles clenching with every thrust. She felt his fur against her bare skin, the warmth of his body. Despite the horror of the situation, she couldn't help the moan that slipped from her lips as his cock filled her completely. It was a sound that seemed to resonate through the very air, a sound that made her feel alive. The other girls watched, their fear mingling with an inexplicable fascination. They could see the way Bunny's body responded to his, the way she arched into him despite the pain. It was as if she was being claimed by a creature of the night, and the very idea sent shivers down their spines. Gremlin's eyes were glued to the scene, her breath catching in her throat as she saw the raw power in Primal's every move. She knew she should be repulsed, but there was something mesmerizing about the way he took what he wanted. It was as if the very air in the cavern was charged with a primal energy, a force that none of them could hope to understand, let alone resist. Bunny's pussy was so tight, her muscles clamping around Primal's cock like a vice. She hadn't ever had a man inside her, and the sensation was overwhelming, painful yet exhilarating in a way she'd never imagined. Her body trembled with every thrust, her legs quivering as she took his length, her inner walls stretching to accommodate him. The tightness of her untouched kitty seemed to fuel his desire, his strokes growing deeper, more demanding as he claimed her in the most primal of ways. Leela and Gremlin, watching from the shadows. They could see the change in Primal as he took her, his snarls of anger giving way to grunts of pleasure. His claws, once poised to strike, now gently traced patterns along her spine, his fur brushing against her skin in a way that was almost tender. Bunny's body was a canvas of contradictions, bruises and cuts from their earlier struggles melding with the fresh marks Primal was leaving. Her whimpers grew louder, morphing into gasps as she met his every thrust with her own, her body moving in a rhythm that was as old as time itself. Her pussy was a fist around him, tightening with every stroke, her walls pulsing with the beginnings of an orgasm that seemed to be building from a place deep within her soul. So tight, Primal growled, his voice low and rough. Bunny gasped. "It's because I've never had a man inside me," she whimpered, her voice a mix of fear and something else. Primal's eyes narrowed, the pupils dilating with a newfound hunger. "Never," he rumbled, his voice thick with lust. "Never," she whimpered, her eyes glazed over with a mix of fear and the beginnings of something more. It's always been just me and my girls." Primal's grip tightened, his teeth flashing in the dim light. "You're so tight," he said, his voice a gruff whisper that seemed to echo through the cavern. "It's like you were made for me, needing to be stretched." Bunny's eyes open, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "I've never felt anything like this," she admitted, her voice shaky with a mix of fear and a building desire. "It's like I'm being split apart and filled up at the same time. Primal's eyes gleamed with a predatory satisfaction. He knew he had her now, knew he could feel the way her body was responding to him. Her pussy was a velvet vice around his cock, each contraction sending a bolt of pleasure through his body. With every thrust, he felt her muscles clench around him, as if she were trying to pull him deeper. It was a sensation that was both thrilling and terrifying, a power that he hadn't felt in centuries. She was tight, so incredibly tight, that each push was a battle against the warm, slick embrace that threatened to consume him entirely. The walls of her pussy was like living, breathing flesh, pulsing and fluttering as they tried to adjust to his intrusion. He could feel every ridge, every fold as he penetrated her, each inch a victory and a challenge.